It was a quiet morning when Insert Name decided to take a chance. The bills were piling up, and after scrolling through endless job listings, one simple advertisement caught their eye. Maid needed for alien household. It seemed like the perfect solution. A job that would pay well enough to cover rent and buy groceries, with no complicated requirements. Who wouldn't want to clean for an alien royal family? The advertisement was vague, but Insert Name was desperate enough to overlook the oddness of it. They gathered their courage and made the call. The voice on the other end was smooth and formal, but polite. "Please report to the Galactic Palace at your earliest convenience," the voice said. It sounded almost too official, but the pay was good. There was no turning back now. The next day, Insert Name arrived at the palace. The towering structure loomed in front of them. Its design sleek and futuristic, unlike anything they had ever seen. There were massive spires reaching into the sky, glowing softly with strange energy. As they approached the entrance, the doors opened automatically with a soft hum, revealing the marble floors inside, more pristine than anything from Earth. A servant led them through the grand halls, all decorated with alien art and intricate patterns, before stopping at an extravagant door. The door opened to reveal a large room, with large windows looking out over a planet they didn't recognize. Standing near the windows was a figure that took Insert Name's breath away. She was an alien woman, unlike anyone they had ever seen before. The alien queen's presence was commanding, but her beauty was otherworldly. Her skin had a soft bluish hue, almost like it was glowing faintly in the light. She wore a flowing gown made of a fabric that shimmered with subtle colors, her long hair falling elegantly around her shoulders. Her ears, pointed but delicate, added to her majestic appearance. "Welcome," she said, her voice cool and calm, with a deep melodic tone. It was both reassuring and unsettling at the same time. "I'm Queen Insert Name, and you are here for the maid position." Insert Name nodded, still in awe. "Yes, Your Majesty. I saw the ad and thought I would apply." The Queen's gaze lingered on them for a moment, as if studying every detail. Then she smiled faintly. "Very well. I trust you can handle the responsibilities." "I'm a quick learner, Your Majesty," Insert Name responded, trying to hide their nervousness. The Queen motioned for them to sit. As Insert Name moved to the seat in front of the Queen's massive desk, they couldn't help but feel a little out of place. The room was filled with exotic items from across the galaxy. Strange plants, odd-shaped sculptures, and luxurious artifacts that spoke of unimaginable wealth and power. "What you'll be doing is simple," the Queen continued, her gaze shifting slightly. "You'll be assisting with the daily needs of my household, cleaning, organizing, and occasionally assisting me in more personal matters." There was an air of mystery in her words. Insert Name couldn't shake the feeling that something more was being implied. They nodded, eager to start, but also unsure of what they were truly getting themselves into. The Queen's eyes sparkled with an unreadable emotion. "There is a great deal more to this role than you may realize," she said softly. "But if you're willing to serve, I think you will find it more than just a simple maid's job." Insert Name looked at the Queen, sensing the weight behind her words. They had no idea what they were about to get into, but one thing was clear. This would be far from the ordinary job they had expected. Over the next few days, Insert Name settled into their new role at the Galactic Palace. The work was far from difficult. Dusting, sweeping, organizing, and helping with minor tasks around the palace. However, there was something strange about the Queen's behavior. She was often absent for long periods of time, disappearing for hours, only to return with a mysterious air about her. Insert Name couldn't help but feel like there was more to this job than they had been told. The palace was enormous, and it seemed like there were rooms that no one ever entered, places hidden from view. Every now and then, the Queen would send Insert Name to certain parts of the palace, places where they weren't sure they were meant to be. It was always with a vague instruction: just clean there or arrange these items. One evening, after the Queen had left for one of her usual outings, insert name was tidying up the royal chambers. They picked up a delicate glass orb from the desk when a low sound echoed from a nearby hallway. Curious, they crept towards the noise, moving quietly down a series of winding corridors. At the end of the hall, the door to the Queen's private study was slightly ajar. Through the crack, insert name could hear the Queen's voice, speaking in a low but intense tone. They couldn't make out the words, but the conversation sounded serious. Pressing their ear against the door, insert name, try to listen. The Queen's voice became clearer, and insert name could hear her talking to someone they couldn't see. The plan is moving forward, the Queen said, but we must act quickly. We cannot afford to wait any longer. There was another voice, deep and authoritative. Insert name could hear only a few words, but they were chilling. The humans will not accept it. The Queen's response was sharp. I will make them accept it. If they do not, we will have no choice but to proceed with force. Insert name's heart raced. What was going on? What was the Queen planning, and why hadn't she told them anything? They had come to work as a simple maid, but now they were wrapped up in something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The Queen's next words were even more puzzling. We'll need an agent on Earth, someone who can blend in and gather the information we need. I know just the person for the job. Before they could react, insert name stepped back from the door, accidentally knocking over a vase on the nearby table. The sound of the crash was loud, and the door immediately swung open. The Queen stood there, her sharp eyes locking onto insert name. For a moment, there was silence, thick, tense, and unspoken. Insert name froze, unsure of what to say or do. The Queen's gaze softened, and she motioned for them to enter. I assume you've overheard something you weren't supposed to, the Queen said with a faint smile, but I was wondering how long it would take before you started putting the pieces together. Insert name tried to speak, but words failed them. The Queen's aura was both commanding and enticing. She wasn't angry. Instead, she seemed almost amused. You see, the Queen continued, her voice steady and calm. This mission isn't just about household duties. It's about something much larger, something that involves your world and mine. You were chosen for a reason. Insert name. The tension in the room thickened, and for the first time, insert name realized that their life had just changed forever. This job was no longer about cleaning. It was about something far more dangerous, something that would take them to places they never expected, into the heart of an alien Queen's secret mission. The Queen's words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Insert name stood frozen in place, unsure of how to respond. The room, once so familiar and regal, now felt like a trap. The Queen, sensing their confusion, gestured for them to sit. Please, relax, the Queen said softly. I know this is a lot to take in, but I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. Insert name slowly sat down, their mind racing. Everything they thought they knew about their simple job had just been shattered. This was no ordinary maid position. The Queen wasn't just a royal figure. They were the mastermind of a secret mission, something that could change the course of history. But why had the Queen chosen them? A simple human, someone who had no experience in anything remotely dangerous or covered. You're probably wondering why I picked you, the Queen continued, as if reading their thoughts. You may not realize it, but your planet holds more significance than you think. And you, insert name, are the perfect person to help me carry out this mission. The Queen's eyes locked onto theirs, intense and full of purpose. You see, there's a war brewing, one that your species doesn't even know about yet. There are forces in the galaxy that want to control Earth, and I can't let that happen. I need an ally, someone who can move between both worlds without suspicion. The weight of her words settled over insert name like a heavy cloak. Earth was in danger, and the fate of their world rested on their shoulders. They had never asked for any of this. They had just wanted a simple job, a quiet life. Yet here they were, being drawn into a battle they never knew existed. The Queen's gaze softened as she watched them process the information. "I know this is overwhelming," she said, "but you have the potential to be far more than just a maid. Your role will evolve as the mission progresses. You'll be my eyes and ears on Earth, gathering critical information and helping me navigate the complexities of the human world. It's not a task I take lightly, but it's essential." Insert name swallowed hard, the fear in their chest building. "But I'm not cut out for something like this," they stammered, the uncertainty evident in their voice. "I'm not an agent. I'm not special." The Queen leaned forward, her expression softening further. "Everyone has a role to play." Insert name. "Sometimes it's the most unlikely people who have the greatest impact. I see something in you that others might overlook. You're resourceful, adaptable. You don't need to be a warrior to make a difference." For a moment, the Queen's words felt like a balm, soothing their nerves, but the reality of the situation still loomed large. Insert name didn't know how to fight, how to deceive, or how to play a part in something so far beyond them. But the Queen had chosen them for a reason, and despite their fear, they couldn't ignore the growing sense of responsibility. What do I need to do?" Insert name finally asked, their voice quiet but steady. The Queen smiled, a faint glint of approval in her eyes. "That's the first step. You're willing to help, and that is all I need for now." She stood up, offering a hand to insert name, her touch cool but firm. "From now on, you will be my ally. This will be your life, part of something far greater than you could ever imagine." Insert name hesitated for a moment, then took her hand, sealing their fate. The unknown stretched before them, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. The mission had begun, and insert name was now a part of it. As the days passed, insert name found themselves drawn deeper into the Queen's world. No longer just a maid, they had become an undercover ally, tasked with infiltrating the human world for the sake of an alien mission. The palace, once an intimidating and majestic place, now felt like a base of operations, filled with secrets and hidden dangers. And the Queen, once a distant and enigmatic figure, had become a constant presence, someone they couldn't ignore, no matter how much they wanted to. The mission, however, was far from simple. Insert name soon learned that they were no longer just cleaning rooms and organizing royal documents. The Queen began assigning them tasks that went far beyond their original job description. One day, the Queen called them into her study, where she was reviewing a large holographic map of the galaxy. "I need you to go to Earth," the Queen instructed, her tone cold and businesslike. "There are certain factions there that could help us or hinder us. I need you to make contact with them and find out what they know. You'll need to blend in, gather intelligence, and report back to me. This is crucial for the success of our mission." Insert name nodded, trying to hide their nerves. The Queen's confidence was both reassuring and intimidating. But Earth, it was their home, their safe place. How could they possibly navigate a galactic mission while pretending to be a part of something so much larger than themselves? The Queen saw their hesitation. "I know this is a lot, but you are the perfect candidate for this role. You know Earth. You understand their ways. You can move between both worlds without suspicion. This is the first step in a much larger plan." The Queen's words filled insert name with a sense of both dread and excitement. They had never imagined their life would lead to something like this. But now, there was no turning back. The mission had already begun, and insert name had a responsibility to see it through. The next few days were a blur of preparations. The Queen provided them with a communicator and a set of coordinates for the first contact. They would be heading to a hidden part of Earth, a place where alien and human interactions were secret and unknown to most. The Queen's advisor, a tall alien with sharp features, trained them on how to blend in, how to act, and how to remain undetected. "You'll be working with a group of humans who have knowledge of our kind," the advisor explained. "They are scattered and secretive, but you must gain their trust. If you do, you'll be able to bring us the information we need." The idea of working with humans who knew about aliens was both thrilling and terrifying. How could they convince these people that they were on their side? How could they hide their true mission without raising suspicion? Once they arrived in the hidden location, insert name, was struck by how different everything felt. The streets were quiet, and the buildings were old, with no hint of modern technology or the advanced alien knowledge they were now involved in. The humans they met were wary but curious, and insert name had to be careful with every word they spoke. They had to pretend to lie, and to gather as much information as possible, while remaining loyal to the Queen. As they settled into their new role, they couldn't help but feel the weight of the Queen's expectations. She had placed her trust in them, and now they had to prove themselves. The mission was more than just a job. It was a path that could change the fate of two worlds. And as insert name prepared to dive deeper into this dangerous underworld, they couldn't shake the growing realization. They were no longer just a maid. They were an ally to an alien queen, and their choices would have consequences far beyond their control. As the days turned into weeks, insert name found themselves caught between two worlds: the familiar human world they had always known and the mysterious, high-stakes mission the Queen had drawn them into. The longer they spent in the hidden corner of Earth, the more they realized how complicated things were becoming. The Queen's plan was beginning to unfold, but the more insert name learned about it, the more they questioned their place in it. The humans they were working with, the ones who knew about aliens, were suspicious. They were a part of an underground network, connected to forces that had their own agendas. Some were friendly, while others had ulterior motives. Gaining their trust was no easy task, and every step forward felt like it could be their last. Insert name spent hours each day gathering information, meeting new people, and slowly building alliances. The Queen's mission was clear: to gain control over the human factions that had the power to influence the galaxy's balance. Yet the deeper they got into the mission, the more they started to understand the true cost of what they were doing. There were times when insert name would stand outside at night, looking up at the stars, and wonder if they had made the right choice. The Queen had promised that the mission would bring peace to both their worlds, but insert name wasn't so sure anymore. The longer they stayed, the more they realized how dangerous and far-reaching the Queen's plans were. They had expected a simple maid's job, but instead they had become a key player in something much larger. And then there was the Queen herself. Insert name couldn't deny the growing tension they felt toward her. The Queen was powerful, brilliant, and captivating, with an air of mystery that kept them constantly on edge. There were moments when the Queen would speak to them, her eyes filled with an intensity that sent a chill down their spine. Her voice, soft but firm, seemed to reach into their very core, making it hard to resist her commands. But there was something else, something that pulled at insert name's heart every time they spoke to her. The Queen wasn't just a ruler. She was a woman who held power over not only their mission, but over their emotions as well. It was hard to tell if the Queen truly cared for them, or if they were just a pawn in her grand plan. Every word she spoke felt like a carefully crafted move, and the more insert name interacted with her, the more they realized they were losing themselves in the game. One evening, after a long day of gathering intelligence, the Queen summoned insert name to her chambers. There was an odd sense of quiet in the air, an unspoken tension that neither of them addressed as they stood in the lavish room. The Queen's eyes locked onto theirs, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. "I know you're struggling with this," the Queen said, her voice low and filled with something that almost sounded like empathy. "But this mission is necessary. It's for the greater good." Insert name hesitated, unsure of how to respond. I'm not sure if I can do this anymore," they confessed. I never thought it would be like this. I never thought I'd be a part of something so dangerous." The Queen took a step closer, her presence overwhelming. "I never asked you to be comfortable. Insert name. I asked you to be loyal, to help me achieve something no one else can." Insert name could feel the weight of her words. The pull between their loyalty to the Queen and their own doubts was becoming too much to bear. But in that moment, they realized something that sent a shiver down their spine. They were in deeper than they ever thought possible. The Queen's mission wasn't just a plan for galactic peace. It was a plan that could change everything. And as they stood there, face to face with the Queen, the tension between them became unbearable. They couldn't decide whether they were more afraid of the mission or of the Queen's growing influence over them. The lines between duty and desire were blurring, and it was becoming harder to tell if they were doing this for the right reasons. The tension in the air had never been thicker. Insert name had become entangled in a web of secrets and lies, with no way of knowing who could be trusted anymore. The Queen's mission was progressing, but everything felt increasingly uncertain. The deeper they dug into the human factions, the more they realized there were hidden agendas at play, dangerous, unpredictable forces working against the Queen's plans. It all started when one of the underground contacts, insert name, had been working with suddenly vanished. The human, a man named Lucas, had promised to provide crucial information about a rival faction that had been making moves to disrupt the Queen's mission. But when insert name went to meet him, the place where they were supposed to meet was empty. No sign of Lucas, no clue as to what had happened to him. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Insert name couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The Queen had told them that certain humans were involved in the mission, people who had pledged allegiance to her cause. But now it felt like someone was playing both sides, leading them down a dangerous path without them even realizing it. The next day, the Queen summoned insert name to her private chambers. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes cold and calculating as she studied them. Insert name couldn't help but notice the way her gaze seemed to pierce through them, as if she already knew everything. "There's been a complication," the Queen said, her voice calm, but with an edge to it. "A traitor in our midst." Insert name felt a chill run down their spine. A traitor? They echoed, their mind racing. Could it be Lucas? Could it have been someone else they'd been working with? The Queen nodded slowly. "Yes, someone who has been feeding information to our enemies. I need you to find out who it is." The words hit insert name like a blow. It was one thing to be involved in a secret mission, but now it seemed like their very life was in danger. Someone they had been working with, someone they might have even trusted, had betrayed them. The Queen's words rang in their ears as they left her chambers. "Find the traitor, or we lose everything." Over the next few days, insert name became more and more cautious. Every conversation felt like a potential trap. They started questioning everyone around them, even the people they had worked with for weeks. Was Lucas really who he said he was? Could someone else in the underground network be the one playing both sides? The answer came sooner than they expected. One night, as insert name was reviewing a stack of documents in a quiet corner of the palace, they received a message. It was encrypted, the words scrambled and nearly impossible to decipher. But at the bottom of the message was one clear instruction: "Meet me at the usual place." It was signed only with the letter L. Without thinking, insert name grabbed their communicator and hurried to the designated meeting spot. Their heart pounded in their chest, the weight of what was at stake bearing down on them. If Lucas was alive, if he had been hiding, they needed to know the truth. When they arrived, the place was dark and quiet, the shadows stretching across the empty street. But there was someone waiting in the shadows, a figure cloaked in secrecy. As they approached, the figure stepped forward, and the dim light revealed a familiar face. But it wasn't Lucas. It was someone far more dangerous. A cold, mocking smile crossed the face of the person in front of them. "Did you really think you were the Queen's only ally?" the stranger said, his voice low and filled with malice. "You've been playing right into my hands all along." Before insert name could react, the man pulled back his cloak, revealing a set of hidden weapons. This was no simple betrayal. This was a trap, a double cross that had been planned from the beginning. In that moment, insert name realized the Queen's mission was more complex than they ever imagined. There were far more players involved than they had been led to believe. The line between friend and foe had blurred completely. And now, insert name had to figure out how to survive long enough to figure out who they could trust. The game had changed, and they were no longer sure if they were the pawn or the one pulling the strings. The days following the encounter with the mysterious figure were a blur of confusion and fear. Insert name could no longer tell who was loyal to the Queen and who had their own agenda. The world they had entered was a maze of deceit, and every step forward seemed to lead them into greater danger. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on them, and the lines between friend and foe were becoming impossible to decipher. After the confrontation in the alley, the stranger had vanished into the night, leaving insert name shaken and unsure of what to do next. They had barely escaped with their life, but the encounter had confirmed what they feared. The mission was compromised. Someone had been playing them all along, manipulating the situation from the shadows. Insert name had no choice but to return to the Queen. They knew they had to report what happened, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into another trap. The Queen had placed her trust in them, but had she also been deceived? Was she a part of the betrayal, or had she been a victim just like them? When insert name arrived at the Queen's chambers, they found her standing by the window, gazing out at the dark expanse of the galaxy. Her posture was regal, but there was a hint of weariness in her eyes that had never been there before. The Queen turned when she heard the door open, her expression unreadable. "Insert name," she said, her voice calm, but with a sharp edge. "You've returned. I trust you have news for me." Insert name hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. The Queen was not the same woman they had met at the beginning of this mission. She had changed, and so had they. They had learned too much, seen too much, to remain blindly loyal. But the mission was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. "The mission, it's been compromised," insert name said, their voice low. "I met someone who knew about the plans, someone who's been working against us. I barely escaped with my life." The Queen's gaze hardened, her eyes narrowing as she processed the information. "A traitor, then," she said, her voice a soft whisper of fury. "It seems you were right to be cautious." Insert name's heart pounded in their chest. "Who else is involved?" they asked, their voice barely above a whisper. "Is this all part of your plan? Have you been manipulating me all along?" The Queen's expression softened for a moment, and for a brief second, insert name thought they saw something resembling guilt in her eyes. But just as quickly, her face returned to its usual mask of control. "I never wanted you to be a pawn in my game," she said quietly. "But you were never meant to know everything. Some truths are too dangerous to share, even with someone as trusted as you." Insert name felt their stomach twist. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The Queen had been keeping secrets, secrets that might change everything they thought they knew about her, about the mission, and about themselves. "You're saying I've been used?" insert name asked, the hurt evident in their voice. The Queen stepped closer, her voice now low and intense. "I never asked you to be a soldier," insert name. "But you were the only one who could do this. I knew the risks, and I knew the cost. Sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good." Insert name stood there, torn between their growing distrust and the pull of their duty. The Queen's words rang in their mind, but they were no longer sure if they were the right words to trust. Had they been nothing more than a tool for the Queen's own ambitions? Had the Queen ever truly cared for them, or had they always been a means to an end? As the silence stretched between them, insert name made a decision. They couldn't continue like this, not if they were to keep their integrity. They had to find the truth, and they had to decide who their real allies were. Do you really think I'll continue to serve you after everything? Insert name, asked, their voice firm. After all the lies. The Queen's eyes darkened, and for a moment, insert name could see the cold ruler they had first met, the one who had used her charm to control every situation. But then she softened. I knew you might feel this way, she said quietly. But it's too late to turn back now. With those words, insert name realized that the final betrayal wasn't just about trust. It was about the choices they were forced to make. The Queen might have her plans, but so did they. And now, they had to figure out whether they would remain loyal to the mission or walk away from everything they had come to believe. The weight of their decision pressed down on insert name. The Queen's words echoed in their mind, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had been nothing more than a pawn in her game. The trust they had placed in her now felt like a lie. Yet there was still the mission to consider. The stakes had always been high, but now the lines between right and wrong were blurred beyond recognition. After the tense conversation with the Queen, insert name spent the next few days reflecting on what had happened. They couldn't escape the truth that had been revealed. The Queen had used them, and yet a part of them still felt drawn to her, a part that had begun to care for the woman who had pulled them into this dangerous world. But loyalty to the Queen could no longer blind them to the larger picture. The galaxy was at war, and insert name had a responsibility, not only to themselves but to their world. The Queen had been clear. The time for hesitation was over. The enemies she had warned them about were moving in, and they had to act quickly. Insert name wasn't sure if they were doing the right thing, but they knew one thing. They had to stop the Queen's plans if they were ever going to make things right. They made a plan. They would confront the Queen once more and demand answers. They would fight back, not just for their own peace of mind, but for the future of Earth. It wasn't easy, knowing they would have to go against the very woman who had once been their ally. But sometimes, doing the right thing meant walking away from everything you thought you knew. The night of the final confrontation arrived. The Queen had summoned insert name to her chambers, expecting to continue their work as if nothing had changed. But insert name knew this would be the moment everything would be decided. When they entered the Queen's chamber, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The Queen stood by the window, her back to them, looking out at the stars. The sight was both beautiful and ominous. The fate of the galaxy seemed to rest on the choices they would make in the next few minutes. You're here, the Queen said without turning around. I knew you would come, but I also knew you would come to the same conclusion. I never meant to hurt you, insert name, but the mission must come first. Insert name took a deep breath, their heart pounding. They knew they had no choice but to confront her now. Your mission is wrong, they said, their voice steady. You've been using me and everyone else to further your own goals. I can't be a part of it anymore. The Queen turned to face them, her expression unreadable. For a moment, there was silence. Then she spoke, her voice softer but still filled with authority. I never wanted this to happen, but sometimes sacrifices are needed for the greater good. The galaxy is at war, and there is no room for weakness. If you cannot understand that, then you are not the ally I thought you were. Insert name felt a pang of hurt, but they held their ground. I'm not your pawn anymore. I won't let you use Earth for your own purposes. The Queen's gaze softened, but there was no sign of backing down. Then we are at an impasse. Just as the tension between them reached its peak, alarms blared throughout the palace. The enemy had arrived. The final battle for the galaxy had begun. With the threat closing in, insert name had to make a choice. Would they join the Queen, despite the betrayal, and fight for her cause? Or would they take a stand against her, risking everything to stop her plans? In that moment, insert name made their decision. They couldn't stand by and watch the queen destroy everything for her own gain. They would fight for what was right, even if it meant going against the queen. As the first wave of enemy forces stormed the palace, insert name ran towards the control room, determined to stop the queen's final plan. The battle was just beginning, and everything would be decided in the next few hours. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and insert name was ready to make their stand, whatever the cost. The battle raged throughout the palace as the enemy forces pressed forward, their weapons blazing with deadly precision. The halls, once pristine and quiet, were now filled with the sound of explosions, shouts, and the heavy footfalls of soldiers. Insert name rushed through the chaos, heart pounding, knowing that every second counted. The queen's plans were now out of reach, but there was still one thing left to do: stop her from winning this war. Insert name had made their decision. They couldn't fight for a cause they didn't believe in. The queen, no matter how powerful or captivating, was wrong. She had used them and others to further her own ambitions, and they couldn't let that happen. But as they moved through the corridors of the palace, something unexpected happened. They found themselves questioning their own actions. The queen had been the one to give them a purpose, to show them a world beyond what they had ever known. In many ways, she had shaped them into someone capable of more than they could have ever imagined. But with that power came a responsibility that they had ultimately rejected. Could they really destroy everything they had built with her? Pushing the thoughts aside, insert name reached the control room. They had to act fast. The room was filled with alien technology, glowing consoles, and the hum of powerful machines. The queen had used this place to command her armies, to coordinate her grand plan. But now it was their turn to take control. Insert name quickly scanned the room, searching for the system that would disable the queen's forces. They needed to cut off her access to the main power grid. Without it, the enemy would gain an advantage, and the queen's plan would fail. They didn't have much time. As their fingers flew over the controls, a voice interrupted them. It was the queen's. Her presence seemed to fill the room, even though she wasn't physically there. "I knew you would do this," the queen's voice echoed through the comm system. It was calm, composed, but there was a hint of sadness beneath the surface. "You've always been too much like me, determined, relentless. But you can't win this battle. Insert name. The war has already begun, and there's no going back now." Insert name gritted their teeth, their hands shaking slightly. The weight of the queen's words stung, but they couldn't back down now. They had made their choice. There was no turning back. With one final push, they activated the shutdown sequence, severing the connection between the queen's command center and the enemy's forces. The alarms blared, signaling that the system had been compromised. The queen's voice on the comms went silent, replaced by a loud, static hiss. The battle outside began to shift. The enemy forces, caught off guard by the sudden loss of power, faltered, their movements becoming erratic. It was their chance to strike, to regain control. Insert name didn't hesitate. They ran to the palace's main exit, hoping they could reach safety before the queen made her final move. As they made their way through the smoke-filled halls, they saw soldiers running in every direction. The chaos was overwhelming. They had succeeded in stopping the queen, but at what cost? The palace was falling apart, and the war was far from over. The weight of their actions pressed on their chest, and they wondered if they had made the right choice. In the distance, they could see the queen standing near the grand entrance, her posture regal, yet broken. She didn't move as insert name approached. There was no anger in her eyes, no sense of victory or defeat, just a deep, sorrowful understanding. "You've done what you thought was right," the queen said softly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the battle. "But understand this, there are always consequences. No one can escape the price of war." Insert name stopped in front of her, unable to speak. The queen's words hung in the air, heavy with truth. They had won this battle, But the war was far from over. The galaxy was still in turmoil, and the cost of their actions would follow them wherever they went. The Queen turned away, her expression unreadable. "Goodbye, insert name," she said, her voice faint but filled with meaning. "I hope one day you'll understand." And with that, she disappeared into the chaos, leaving insert name standing in the wreckage of a broken world. As the dust settled, insert name looked around, realizing the enormity of what they had just done. They had stopped the Queen, but at what cost? The galaxy was still in conflict, and their role in it was far from over. For the first time in a long while, insert name didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain, they had to keep moving forward. The journey wasn't over yet. The dust of the battlefield began to settle, but the weight of what had just occurred pressed heavily on insert name's shoulders. The Queen was gone, her plans disrupted, and the mission they had once been a part of was now nothing more than a shattered dream. They had fought for what they believed was right, but the consequences of that choice were still unfolding before them. The palace, once a symbol of power and grandeur, now lay in ruins. The ground was scorched, the walls cracked, and the silence that followed the battle felt almost suffocating. Insert name stood amidst the wreckage, unsure of what to do next. The war was far from over. The galaxy was still in chaos, and no matter how much they had hoped for peace, it seemed like conflict would continue to define their existence. Insert name's mind raced. They had destroyed the Queen's plans, but in doing so, they had also lost something important. The Queen had been more than just a ruler. She had been a mentor, a force that had shaped their path. But now, with her gone, insert name was left to face the consequences alone. No longer a maid, no longer an ally, but a person trying to find their place in a broken galaxy. They began walking toward the edge of the palace, where the remnants of the enemy forces were retreating. Some were surrendering, others escaping into the night. Insert name didn't know what would happen to them or what role they would play in the future, but one thing was clear: they had to keep moving forward. The past was gone, and the future was uncertain, but there was still hope. As insert name approached the ruined gates, a familiar face appeared in the distance. It was Lucas, the contact who had disappeared, the one they thought had betrayed them. But now, there he was, standing amidst the wreckage, his eyes searching the area. "You're still alive," insert name said, a mixture of surprise and relief in their voice. Lucas nodded, his expression grim. "I didn't know who to trust anymore," he admitted, "but I never gave up on you. I knew you were doing the right thing." Insert name looked at him, wondering what had happened during the chaos. "What now?" they asked. "What happens to us? To the galaxy?" Lucas sighed, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The war is far from over. The factions will rebuild, and new leaders will rise. But this time, things will be different. You may have stopped the Queen, but your actions have set something else in motion. A new path is opening up." Insert name felt a sense of uncertainty, but also a strange sense of relief. The future was unknown, but they were no longer alone. They had made a choice, and though it had been difficult, it had been the right one. They had stopped a powerful ruler, but they had also saved themselves. "We have a long road ahead of us," insert name said, turning to Lucas. "But I'm not afraid anymore." Lucas gave a small smile, nodding in agreement. "Neither am I. We'll rebuild together." With that, the two of them stood side by side, staring into the distance. The galaxy was vast and filled with uncertainty, but for the first time in a long time, insert name felt like they could face whatever came next. The battle was over, but a new journey had begun, and this time they would walk it on their own terms.